The Osmo Pocket is a surprisingly small camera with a surprising amount of features and tricks up its sleeve. In this video, we're going to go over the pros and cons of the Osmo Pocket. Hello everyone, my name is Keith, and in this video we're talking about the Osmo Pocket. And before we get started, I just want to throw a little disclaimer out there and say that some of the footage you will see in this video was shot on a Osmo Pocket that DJI lent me when they were first released. They got a hold of me and asked me if I want to review an Osmo Pocket, and of course I said yes. So they didn't let me keep it. Believe me, I tried, but they said I had to box it up and send it back. And this review is completely my own words. Just wanted to throw that out there. The first pro is the small form factor. And the small form factor is awesome because I can put this into my laptop bag that I take to work every day, and I don't even know it's there until I need it. Until I think this would be a great time to be able to shoot this thing that's right in front of me right now. And then I remember, oh, I have my Osmo Pocket on me, and I can just literally take my backpack off, take it out of this case, and start filming right away. I find myself reaching for the Osmo Pocket more than I'm reaching for my cell phone camera. And that's pretty huge. I did not expect that to happen when I picked this device up for the first time. What about the gimbal? None of this matters if the gimbal doesn't produce great results. Well, the gimbal actually is pretty good. One drawback is that the camera is so small, it's easy to move it around, it's not that heavy. But if you can keep it steady and you don't have too much vertical movement, it actually does a really good job at smoothing out some of like the side to side motion. When I got this camera, it was wintertime in Ohio. So going outside and just walking in boots down the sidewalk, or there's this trail that we usually go to, walking on the trail with the Osmo Pocket was the first stress test that I could really think of. It actually handled it pretty well. Like I said, it doesn't handle vertical movements that well, but horizontal movements, the camera actually does a really good job at smoothing those out. So here's some footage of walking along a snowy trail, and I think the Osmo Pocket is doing a pretty good job considering I'm walking over sticks and ice and snow with boots on, and I know that it's not really easy to see how stable it really is, but I'm walking and I'm not keeping my arms tucked in at all. I'm all over the place, and this was kind of the general test to see how good for a general user that's not really experienced holding a gimbal would do, and I think it did fairly well. Another feature that I did not expect the Osmo Pocket to have when it was first released was 4K at 60 frames per second. As soon as I heard that, I thought, okay, it's just gonna have 4K 60 FPS. For marketing. There's no way they can put that resolution in a camera this small when my Mavic 2 Pro doesn't even have 4K at 60 frames per second. But whenever I used the Osmo Pocket with 4K at 60 frames per second, I was blown away at how good it actually was. Even with this smaller sensor, the image quality is really good. Another one of my favorite features of the Osmo Pocket is the 1080p 120 frames per second. I really think that straight out of the camera, the Mavic Air and this Osmo Pocket have a lot of similarities. It's a little noisy, it's a little contrasty, but it is definitely usable. Another similarity between the Osmo Pocket and the Mavic Air is that 100 megabit video rate. That video rate is awesome if you're going to be color grading any footage. While you wouldn't want to push the footage too far, you can grade the Osmo Pocket footage and it does look pretty nice. Overall, the Osmo Pocket is pretty easy to use. The setup and activation experience is kind of clunky, because you need your phone to activate the device. But after you activate the device, you don't really need to use your phone. You can do everything just on the Osmo Pocket itself, but I rarely only use the Osmo Pocket by itself. It is kind of weird at first. You have to enable Pro mode or manual mode to unlock all of the configurable settings like shutter speed and ISO. The aperture's locked, so you can't adjust aperture. But to adjust those, it did take me a second to learn that I had to flip into either pro mode or manual settings to get to that. One nice thing about the Osmo Pocket, if you configure it using your phone and you disconnect your phone, the Osmo will still remember those settings and it will keep those even if you turn the camera off and on again, which is really handy because when I'm filming something, I try to adhere by the 180-degree shutter rule. So I rarely really change my settings that drastically unless I'm doing a time lapse. In that case, using the Mimo app is way easier than setting up multiple points and settings just using the Osmo Pocket. Time lapses with the Osmo Pocket are awesome. It's nice because you can just set the Osmo down and it has a flat surface on the bottom, and you can configure it to either film a time lapse looking in one area, or you can configure up to 5 different points, and throughout the duration of the time lapse, the Osmo Pocket will automatically pan and create a motion lapse. That used to take a lot of technology to do. Obviously, it's not going to be as high quality as my big camera and my gimbal, but it does export a 1080p version of your video if you just want to send it quickly. With this, I still get a folder with those images and I can come back and tweak them a little more. But if I just want to send a time lapse really quickly to my Instagram or Instagram stories, I can already just have that 1080p version ready to go and ship it right where I took that time lapse. Another great part of the Osmo Pocket and the gimbal is being able to take long exposure pictures from just holding the camera really still. It's pretty cool. Sometimes you can't put the camera down, like if you're in like the middle of a crowd and you don't want to put the camera on the ground and you don't have a tripod. Just being able to hold it kind of unlocks some new creative potential. When the Osmo Pocket first released, the flat color picture profiles like Cinelike weren't available, but now they are, and I love being able to choose between a standard picture profile and a flat picture profile. If I just want to shoot something and then upload it to my phone and send it to my Instagram story, I can use a standard profile and just not really have to tweak the footage a whole lot. But if I want to color grade the footage, I can put it in Cinelike and come back to my computer and really try to push the footage a little farther. Active track and object tracking are awesome with the Osmo Pocket. I wasn't expecting to use them as much as I actually do. I can draw a box around something and walk past it, and the Osmo Pocket will still continue to lock on with active track. Another cool use for this camera is as an overhead filming rig. Since it's so small, you don't really need a big beefy tripod to stabilize this camera. And with the ability to use active track, you can actively track whatever you're doing and the camera will follow you, so you don't have to worry about going out of frame. I also like how much attention to detail this Osmo Pocket has. You get this case, and the case is designed so that you can access all of the ports even while it is secured in this case. There's a hole for the smartphone adapter cut out of the band that secures it. There is access to the micro SD card slot, and there's also access to the USB-C charging port on the bottom. I like that I don't have to take this out of the case to charge it. I also like how fast this camera turns on. After you take it out of its case and turn it on, in about 5 seconds, this camera is on and ready to start shooting. The durability of the Osmo Pocket was something I was really concerned about since it's so small and I'm going to be taking it with me every day. The case is a plasticky hard case, so that was nice to see right when I took it out of the box. But I was also concerned about the gimbal and how it would actually hold up. When I was out filming, I went and just walked my German Shepherd and it started to snow and I was filming her with this. I was actually kind of nervous because there's these little cutouts on the back of the gimbal. I just really didn't want water or moisture to get in there. and water and moisture definitely got in there. It seemed to be fine still. I've still used this and I've seen no signs of breaking because water got back in here. I have dropped this camera a few times, did use this every day as a normal camera, and it did hold up. I was very surprised. Another feature I loved is the ability to plug my phone into this and airdrop files to my friends. I took this skating, and of course everyone wants their footage when we're done skating. So I was able to immediately airdrop them their clips after we finally got the trick. As soon as we're done, as soon as they land the trick, I can open up on the Mimo app, there's a little play button on the bottom right-hand side, and I can tap it and then tap to send, and they already airdropped them their clips. It's really nice, and they absolutely loved it. And I loved it because I don't have to come home, sift through a bunch of footage, and then give it to them. If you're using your own footage, you can just download it from the app. You don't have to send it to yourself or airdrop it to yourself or something like that. You can just save it to your camera roll and upload it wherever you want to upload it from there. Speaking of uploading, the ability to film portrait videos with this camera is pretty cool. I've been getting into Instagram stories and just posting videos on Instagram and Facebook a lot more lately, and I've been filming in portrait mode a lot. Being able to film exactly how I want the framing to be and not filming in landscape and then coming home and cropping the edges in is really cool. And it makes framing a whole lot easier when you're filming in the native format that you're going to ship the thing in. Another pro for the Osmo Pocket is no recording limits. You can film as long as this camera has memory card space and battery. I just ran into this problem with my Sony camera. I don't know at what point of the video you're at right now, but I was filming for 30 minutes to get here, and my camera just stopped recording. If I didn't have a monitor, I wouldn't know that, and I would just be talking to a camera on standby right now. As long as it has battery and memory card space, you're going to continue to film. I also appreciate that this has some advanced camera features that I did not expect to see on here, namely zebra stripes and a histogram. If you're trying to nail the exposure and do some grading in post, nailing the exposure is key. And without some kind of visual reference, if something's blown out or you're clipping either the highlights or the shadows, it makes it hard, especially outdoors on a phone screen that's really reflective, to see that stuff on there. But with zebra stripes, you know how to exactly not blow out the sky, for example. And with the histogram, you know if your shadows are clipping and you're just losing data. It is really cool whenever you're filming something, especially with a gimbal, because they have a tendency to lose the horizon. If you have the grid enabled, you can keep track of that horizon as you're filming, and it makes it a lot easier to get quality footage and not have to import something and shift it 3 degrees over time or something in post. So now on to the cons for the Osmo Pocket, and there are a few. The first one is the most obvious, and that is there is a learning curve whenever you pick this up for the first time, or any gimbal for that matter. Using the gimbal and getting it to act how you want it to can really depend, especially on this gimbal, on what modes you're in. On follow, it will follow your subject and you can use active track. On tilt locked, it's more of kind of like a blocking on the horizon, and it will stay that way whatever way you move the camera. On FPV mode, it's the opposite. It will move with the direction of the camera, up, down, left, right, anywhere. So if you're trying to just pick this camera up and not really dig deep into the different modes that this camera has to offer, it can be very confusing. And the first time I picked it up, I didn't read anything about it. I just threw the manual out and I'm like, it's a gimbal. I have a gimbal. How hard could it be? Well, there is kind of a learning curve to this. There are slow and fast modes. So in fast mode, the responsiveness is tuned up a little more, kind of like sport mode on a Ronin S. And then slow mode is, for a little bit more cinematic footage. You can get better results with slower moving things. It's a little more forgiving in slow mode, but if you're trying to film something fast, you're going to get very frustrated because it'll just never seem like you can catch the action that you're going for. The first couple clips I was on slow mode and I was just really confused. But when I turned it to fast, it really picked up responsiveness and I was able to get what I wanted to get. Another part of the learning curve for the Osmo Pocket is getting that vertical bob eliminated from your footage. And really that just comes with practice. You have to learn how to walk steady and not really walk up and down as much and just kind of keep the gimbal as flat as you can. A little bit of horizontal movement isn't bad, but vertical movement, especially if you're close to an object, will kind of ruin your shots. If you're still having a hard time filming normal 24 or 30 frames per second footage with the Osmo Pocket, I would recommend just cheating and doing 4K 60 or 1080p at 120 frames per second and smoothing out all of those imperfections with slow motion. It is amazing how much movement you can hide with slow motion in this gimbal. I was really surprised. Another con for the Osmo Pocket is the need for accessories. And if you buy this, you will definitely need some accessories. The best one I can think of is the wireless module. If you're going to be filming time lapses or using this as a remote camera, either as an overhead filming camera or just putting it in a weird position like at an event and you want to be able to control it remotely, this is a great accessory to have. Actually, it's right here. And you can attach it to the bottom of the Osmo. You have to remove the smartphone adapter. And now you can use the Mimo app on your phone to control the Osmo Pocket just like you could if it was attached to your phone. Another cool part about this is that instead of having the USB-C port on the bottom, it's now in the back and you can use that to charge the Osmo while it's filming. That is one of the best parts about having this wireless module. Another con later that I wrote down was you can't have this on the table without the wireless module and charge it and have it do your time lapses or filming at the same time. It's just going to run out of battery unless you buy this adapter and now you can charge it and use it at the same time. I think that was a weird design decision to put the USB-C port on the bottom instead of on one of the sides where you can use it and charge it at the same time. And I think it's kind of weird that a camera of this quality needs an adapter to use wireless, to be able to control it wirelessly from your phone. It's 2019 and everything can be controlled wirelessly, especially DJI products. So I just think that's kind of weird, and this thing really isn't that cheap. And it's easy to lose because it's small. Another accessory is the action camera mount. If you have a GoPro or you own any GoPro accessories, this is going to let you mount your camera to those GoPro accessories. And it's actually really nice. The one from the DJI site. I have some cheap ones, and you don't have to remove the smartphone adapter for some of the cheaper ones. Like there's a cheap accessory kit on Amazon for like $30, and it's made for the Osmo Pocket, but it just has these action camera style mounts on them. But that you don't have to remove the smartphone adapter. So this one is more secure because the smartphone adapter has these little grooves in it and it's not going to go anywhere. So I've mounted this in some pretty suspect places, and I always use this mount because it's just sturdier. If I'm just gonna, mount it on a suction cup and put it on a window and it's not gonna move, I will use the cheaper mount that I got from the accessory kit on Amazon. I'll link the cheap accessory kit below in the description. It's also linked in the article post on Aerial Guide. Having that action style mounting opens up a lot of doors because you can mount a GoPro anywhere, and now you can mount your Osmo Pocket pretty much anywhere too. Another one of the accessories that I use a lot with this camera is the smartphone adapter. The smartphone adapter kind of takes away some of the tension from just this little port with your phone. I don't like how if you're just plugging your phone in, you have to kind of hold this in a weird way that puts a lot of stress on this port of your phone. And I use this port for charging my phone, listening to music in my car. Like if something breaks in this port, my phone is pretty much useless and I have to go to the Apple store to get it fixed. But with a holder, the holder clamps in with both sides and it ratchets to your phone, and it also holds the Osmo Pocket, so there's not as much tension on this port. I really like that. It's kind of hard to do. Another feature that I really like about this phone holder is that there is a cold shoe mount on top, so if you want to mount a microphone or light or anything like that, you have a secure cold shoe to do it on, and it's a nice aluminum feeling holder. So it does feel really nice when you're using your phone with the Osmo to have this. And this is the one on the DJI site. This is like the PGY Tech one. There is one in that $30 cheapo Amazon one, but it is not, it's plastic and it's not quite as rigid, but it does work. I've used it for months and it worked perfectly fine. If you use that, I would really recommend getting that one. And if you use it and you feel like you're using your Osmo Pocket and your phone connected to each other, and some, like I was filming skateboarding and I knew this works, but I need a nicer one because this one is like $30 from DJI.com. You might be able to find it cheaper on Amazon, but I really do recommend this one. And I like that this one ratchets from both sides. The one that you get from Amazon, it only ratchets from one side, and it just makes the Osmo be higher in the holder, and it doesn't support it as much, but this one is like rock solid. So this one's awesome. The $30 in the cheapo Amazon bag one, just okay. Another con with the Osmo Pocket for me is the microphone quality. It isn't a terrible sounding microphone, but if you're filming an event, you'll definitely want to have some external audio, because if you're in a big room and you're trying to film one person, it's the equivalent of like a cell phone microphone. It's not that great, but it gets the job done if you need it. But external audio is always going to be the way to go. If you're just holding it out for a quick vlog and saying something to the camera, it's more than proficient. But if you're only using this camera to vlog, definitely get a microphone. The low light performance on the Osmo Pocket is not really a pro, it's not really a con, it's just something to be aware of. At ISO 100 to, I'll say 800, it's usable. Lower the better, obviously, but over 800, it is really noisy, and I honestly wouldn't advise anyone shooting above ISO 800 if you're going to use the footage for something. If you're just, filming a quick Instagram story or, something quick, then it's totally fine. It works. But if you're trying to film usable footage, keep the ISO as low as possible. Another pro, kind of a con, depending on how you look at it, is the fixed focal length. And I know saying a fixed focal length of 26 millimeters in a camera this small is really nitpicky, but it's almost like I have to hold my hand out really far if I want to film myself. And if I want to film someone else, it's almost like I need a little bit more reach. So I understand why they did that. It's kind of a middle ground between the two. It's not really a pro, it's not really a con, it's just something to be aware of. Like if I was vlogging, I would have to hold it out to about right here. Another con that I touched on earlier was the controls of only using the Osmo Pocket. If you don't have the Mimo app, navigating the menus is a little hard at first. I did not read the instructions. I did not watch any videos to try to figure out the menu layout of the Osmo Pocket. and I just thought it was a entry-level camera, so it'll be easier to figure out, and I was wrong. Definitely take your time and figure out the menu system, because it caused me a lot of headaches when I went out the first few times and just was kind of stubborn and refused to learn it. But after I sat down and learned what pulling down from the top or from the left or from the right will actually accomplish, using the Osmo on its own was a lot nicer. I tend to still use it with the Mimo app, but there are certain times where having that knowledge is really helpful. My last con of the Osmo Pocket, and it's probably the biggest one for me, is the lack of active track in 4K 60 frames per second. I love filming 4K 60 frames per second, and I love active track just because it helps me get better shots with this gimbal, and not being able to use them simultaneously is a big drawback for me. I hope DJI addresses this. I mean, even with a firmware update and capping the recording limit at like 10 minutes or something, I would be okay with that, because when I'm actively tracking something in 4K 60 frames per second, I'm not really putting the camera down and filming an entire event or something. Maybe I would be filming in 24 frames per second and I can use active track and that's okay. But really being able to get even a few clips of 4K 60 with active track would be a game changer for me. That being said, I usually film in 2K and just upscale it to the 4K timeline when I want to film 60 frames per second and still have active track active. Or I just film in 120 frames per second. The active track in 120 1080p works really good. Something really small that I would love to be able to change on the Osmo Pocket is the starting and stopping beep. I don't like beeps on my camera. I turn them all off. It doesn't make any sense to me to have those beeps. Maybe when a time lapse is done or something and I'm not by my Osmo, that would make sense to have the beeps there. But when I'm starting and stopping my footage, I really don't want to have that beep in there. It's just kind of annoying and it feels really unprofessional. Not that this is a professional camera, but I just feel weird having those beeps on when everything I own, I'm able to turn the beeps off, and I'm just so used to that. So kind of a minor gripe. I hope it's something that DJI addresses with a firmware release in the future. So DJI, if you're listening to this, please let me turn off the beeps. I hate the beeps. Not a fan of the beeps. Beeps. Bears. Beeps. Battlestar Galactica. So those are my pros and cons about the Osmo Pocket. If anything else comes up, I will update the article in the description, and all of my updates will be there. And if you scroll to the bottom, there will be an update section, so you don't have to try to thumb through the whole article. Although I would like it if you read the article too. But another thing I would like is one of those wooden handle, wooden grips, like right here. I find myself holding the Osmo Pocket when it's in this phone holder, kind of like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, and it just has like a good form factor. I would love if someone could 3D print like a mirrorless DSLR looking setup for this, because I feel like if I had a more of a rig to hold on to, I could get more better footage. All right, this is getting ridiculous and my brain's turning to mush. So would I recommend this camera? Yes, I would. It does have its drawbacks, but it's a camera that can fit in your pocket and it has a mechanical gimbal on it. That is amazing. It can film 1080p 120 frames per second. That is amazing. 4K 60 frames per second. It has decent low light for a camera of its size, active track. It has a lot of really good features. Zebra stripes, histogram, grid lines. And it's for $350. It's hard to beat that in this price range, especially with that feature set. So even for beginners, advanced users, vloggers, travelers, I can't wait to travel more with this camera and just put it in my bag and use it when I need to. It opens up a whole creative realm of possibilities. So I'm looking forward to using this. and I will be posting other videos for this too. I have some other just kind of like weird gotchas about the Osmo Pocket. So I will be also making a before you buy kind of video, and I will be making a video that will go over the accessories that I'm using and the accessories that I recommend for the Osmo Pocket. So if you're interested in seeing those videos, please subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one.